لورد استیو مکیب: ما باور داریم برای توحش آخوندها جایگزینی وجود دارد. ما گرد هم آمده ایم تا از طرح 10 ماده‌ای مریم رجوی حمایت کنیم.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all here today. You're very welcome. And as we've heard, we're meeting here today at really what's a very worrying and difficult time for the people of Iran, made the regime more determined than ever to crack down on dissent and resistance from within. And there can be no greater evidence of this than the recent surge in executions, including heroic resistance members like Hamid Validi and Nima Shahi, and you'll see around the table and around the walls the names of many others. The situation remains extremely volatile. The prospect of another uprising is there, but so is the possibility of a huge increase in state killings and another mullah's massacre. So I want to acknowledge and applaud the efforts of those brave souls who are trying to keep the flame of protest going, their efforts to organise resistance and challenge the regime, while all the time knowing that their lives are on the line, and we cannot and should not underestimate the sacrifices they are making. And we're gathered here today because we believe there is an alternative to the brutality of the mullahs, or yet another autocracy under the titular head of the former Shah's son. We're gathered because we want to support the 10-point plan of Meriem to bring democracy, secular governance, equality, free elections, a proper judicial system, and abolition of the death penalty. I support her proposals for a transitional government and rapid progress to internationally observed free elections. And while I've never believed the regime can be changed through bombing raids organised by other countries, I recognise that the Iranian people are the only people who can bring about meaningful change. It doesn't mean that the rest of us can sit on the sidelines and do nothing. And of course, what the UK government could do at the moment is speak out loudly against these executions, make clear our disgust, and make clear that we're not turning a blind eye to what they're doing. And of course, we can make it absolutely clear that we abhor what's happening with the IRGC, and the Prime Minister can make good that we're finally and totally going to ban this organisation. I believe that's worth working for, it's worth fighting for, and it's very much worth supporting. Thank you.
لورد آلتون: برخلاف تصورات رایج در اروپا، حمایت عمومی از مقاومت ایران بیشترین تأثیر را بر رژیم خواهد داشت. به رسمیت شناختن سیاسی مقاومت تهدیدی وجودی برای رژیم ایران محسوب می شود.
Let me begin by saying how much I welcome the news that we're finally going to see the prescription of the IRGC. Many of us here, the parliamentarians from both houses, from all sides, have campaigned on this together for far too long, but I'm delighted that that decision has been finally made. I'm also, Steve, grateful to you for setting the scene about the real theme for this evening being the executions that have been taking place endlessly. Shocking to see this terrible shedding of blood of people that I'm going to talk a little bit about in my own remarks this evening. privileged to chair the Joint Committee of Human Rights. It's made up of members of both Houses of Parliament. And we did a report last year on transnational repression, and the most moving testimonies were given by. And in our report on transnational repression, we talk a lot about the atrocities that have been committed by the Iranian regime. And I hope that any of you who have not read that, you'll be able to find it on the parliamentary website, the Joint Committee on Human Rights, and also a debate that subsequently took place in the House of Lords of our recommendations. And you'll see that everybody who participated, left, right and centre, from all sides of the House, called for the proscription of the IRGC. So it's wonderful that that has happened. I won't say it's a pleasure to be with you this evening, but it's something that over the years, whenever the NCRI have asked those of us, our colleagues around the table, to come, we do come because we want to identify with you and with the sacrifices of those who have been struggling for freedom. And all of us who watch you from the Lords, I mean, we applaud you for the stand that you've been taking. First of all, though, I want to express my profound sorrow at the execution of young people aged between 18 and 30 who have been arrested during the recent uprisings, as well as 8 members of the resistance who have been executed as well. The courage of these young people and the dignity with which they have faced these executioners is almost inconceivable. We're deeply concerned by the silence of the international community, and as Steve has said, often, in particular, the silence of Britain in the face of these recent executions. Under the cover of war, the regime can not only present itself as a victim before the international community, but can also continue its war against its own people in complete impunity, exploiting the internet blackout. The regime knows that when the war ends, it will once again have to face the revolt and the anger of the people. But how many more innocent lives will be lost before then? Contrary to the prevailing assumptions in Europe, public support for the Iranian resistance would have the greatest impact on the regime. Political recognition of the resistance poses a profound threat to Tehran. By ignoring the Iranian people and their organised resistance, Europe and the United Kingdom have deprived themselves of their most effective leverage and ally. It's a position that all of us, I think back to all the meetings that Lord Carlisle and I have had over the years where we've called for the resistance to be recognised and listened to. One of our other late colleagues along that illustrious list you mentioned earlier on, of course, was Betty Boothroyd, Baroness Boothroyd, who even went to the courts in order to protest about the attempts to outlaw the National Council of Resistance for Iran, whilst simultaneously saying it was okay for the IRGC to continue operating in this country. Experience shows that the combination of mass protests, resistance units and combatants represents a real existential threat to the regime. Airstrikes cannot overthrow it, but the Iranian resistance can. No level of bombing can substitute for the force on the ground, the force of the Iranian people themselves. The regime would not have mobilized its entire repressive apparatus against the resistance over the past decades if it hadn't identified that organization as the principal threat to their survival. If the resistance is the regime's principal target, it's because it's the most plausible alternative, the organization with the greatest chance of overthrowing the mullahs and achieving genuine change. That's why the European Union must enter into dialogue with the National Council of Resistance of Iran as a democratic alternative committed to a transition founded on popular sovereignty. And it's why all groups who believe in a democratic Iran should work together to usher in a settlement based on the wishes of the courageous Iranian people. A provisional government should be recognized, a government which, on the basis of Mrs. Rajvi's 10-point plan, which all of us are committed to, constitutes the foundation of a modern and democratic system, and which is committed to transferring maximum power within 6 months to a parliament elected by the Iranian people. As early as 2004, Mrs. Maryam Rajvi publicly declared that the solution for Iran was neither foreign war nor appeasement, but a third option, as she put it, democratic change brought about by the Iranian people and their resistance. Mrs. Rajvi has welcomed the ceasefire and expressed her hope that it will lead to the end of the war and open the way to peace and freedom. It's essential that the regime's calls for peace should not be exploited as a pretext for a new policy of appeasement. A peace without an explicit commitment to a regime change led by the people will not resolve the crisis, and it risks preparing far broader and more destructive wars in the future. Any international agreement with Tehran, including any agreement based on the current ceasefire, must be made conditional on verifiable improvements in the human rights situation in Iran and the ending of these odious, repugnant executions to which the people of Iran continue to be subjected. Thank you very much for listening.